Hi everyone and good morning. Welcome back to biology class. Today we are covering topic 2, classification in plants. So if you have your Cornell notes ready, this is your learning objective 2.2.3. State the main features used to place organisms into groups within the plant kingdom, limited to ferns and flowering plants, which includes dicots and monocots. So your step to success today is to state the main features of ferns and state the main features of flowering plants, Monocotyledon and Dicotyledon. Firstly, let's talk about plants. What are they? The plants are members of the kingdom Plantae. Plants are living organisms that cover much of the land of planet Earth, and they include grass, trees, flowers, bushes, ferns, mosses, and more. What makes a plant a plant? So here is the first picture that I provided for you, and you could see the sunlight here being absorbed by the leaf, and they also absorb carbon dioxide and water from the soil. In the end, they do release a gas called oxygen, and they're producing food. So when you're thinking about this to do with a process whereby plants make food with the aid of sunlight, that is photosynthesis. So the first thing about plants is that they carry out photosynthesis. Secondly, if you look over here, we have this very shiny structure, and that right there is what we call the cuticle. It is waterproof and prevents water from escaping the plant cells. The third thing about plants, and all plants, their cells have this part right here called the cell wall. So all plant cells have cell wall. And lastly is how they reproduce. So there is right here, number 1, either they make spores or they make seeds. And just to let you know, spores are very tiny compared to a seed. The reason being is because seeds actually contain food stores, and we call them the cotyledon. We're going to cover more about that later. So if we were to look at plants, you can divide them into different types, and we classify them differently as well. In terms of their reproducing ways, they could either be spore-bearing, it means they make spores, or they make seeds, so we call those seed-bearing plants. What is a spore, though? A spore is a reproductive cell that can develop into a new individual. So imagine kind of like a little baby turning into a big adult. However, we're talking about just one cell here. One cell to divide, to become big and mature into an individual. Spores are produced by non-flowering plants. It means they don't make flowers. They also are produced by bacteria, fungi, and algae. And actually, these 3 are not plants, but they are microorganisms. So we talked about spores and spore-bearing plants, and we also said there are seed-bearing plants. What is a seed then? The small part of a flowering plant that grows into a new plant is a seed, and a seed can be defined as the reproductive structure of a plant. This is an example of the structure of a seed, and you have covered this in year 8. So the seed has a seed coat to cover it and protect it, and you have the embryo there that will develop into the adult plant. You have a leaf there so that this embryo can make its own food. And they also have a food storage here that, because the leaf here is not exposed to sunlight yet, can't make their own food yet. So they do need some food and energy for it to develop. So here is a GIF. You can see that once the seed sprouts, they make cute little leaves there, and that's where it's from. So what makes a plant a plant? So the characteristics of plants is that they make their own food by photosynthesis. They have a waxy cuticle, a waxy layer to protect them and keep them from drying out. They have eukaryotic cells with cell walls that are rigid, and they reproduce by making spores or making seeds. The basic structure of vascular plants include the fact that all vascular plants have leaves, stem, and root. The meaning of vascular here is that they have these vessels that help to transport food and water. So basic structure of vascular plants: leaf, is an organ that is specialized for photosynthesis. The stem is a structure that supports the leaf and the flowers, have structures that transport food and water around the plant to help it grow. And lastly, roots. They grow underground and they help keep the plant from falling over. They gather and absorb water and minerals from the soil. In year 8, we divided and classified plants as with seeds and without seeds. And we said that plants with seeds can be divided into flowering plants or non-flowering plants. And without seeds can be divided into algae or fern. However, in O levels, we're only going to focus on flowering plants and ferns. These are just pictures of the other ones that previously you have learned. And we looked at algae and mosses and lichens. And here's a really cute video about how lichens look like. You can see that they're like pretty much absorbing the water. And they're really kind of weird looking, but they are also pretty cute. So that's your lichens. I'm just going to forward that video. I want to focus on our main objective here, which is the fern. So ferns are land plants with well-developed structures. They are vascular too. That means they have the leaf, the stem, and the roots. Their stem, leaves, and roots are similar to flowering plants. Features of a fern include the fact that the stem is usually completely grown below the ground, and the stem grows horizontally below the ground, sending up leaves at intervals. Roots grow directly from the stem as well, and you can see here that the stem and the roots, they're pretty much like joined together, and actually up till here that is pretty much below the ground. Here are examples of pictures of ferns. And some of the features of ferns is that the leaf shapes, they do vary from species to species, but they are several cells thick. And when we talk about several cells and types of cells that work together for a function, remember that means tissue. So they have different layers of tissue. And you can see here, this is what we call a cross-section of a drawing of the leaf plant. And you can see that the types here are pretty much different. When they look the same, that means that they have a similar function. So those are actually different tissues. Most have layers of tissues that include upper epidermis, lower epidermis, palisade cells, spongy mesophyll cells. So these are just names of layers of tissues. So all you have to do is just remember the names. So how do ferns reproduce? Ferns reproduce by making spores from the spore capsules called Sporangia. Sporangia can be found at the lower side of the leaf. Sporangia are usually arranged in compact groups. So here is on the underside of the leaf or of a fern. And you can see that they have like these really kind of insect-like looking structures. But that is what we call the Sporangia. They look really gross. But look over here, those little dots. Those little dots are the spores. So they are the ones that make those spores, which is the reproductive cell that in the end this will, if under the very good conditions, they will develop into a new fern plant. So here's the top side of a fern and here's the bottom. So you can definitely identify a fern if you look at the bottom side of them. They would have these sporangium and spores. Next, we're going to focus on flowering plants. And this right here is an apple. And apples actually have flowers too. And you know that apples have seeds. Flowering plants are plants that make flowers. Flowering plants reproduce by making seeds. And seeds are formed in the ovary found in flowers. Flowering plants are divided into two subclasses though. You have Monocotyledon and Dicotyledon. Monocotyledon or monocots are flowering plants that only have one cotyledon in their seeds. Cotyledon is an embryo of a leaf which often contains food stores. So right here is a seedling. That means a baby plant. And you can see here, I think this would be the stem. And that would be the leaves. And that right there, that is the cotyledon, which is the food store that helps to give the plant nutrition so that they can develop and grow. Monocots have the structure. They have long and narrow leaves. And the leaf veins are parallel. That means that the veins, you can see those lines right there, they are all parallel and they're pretty much straight up. This is just another picture of how the parallel veins look like. So you can see this is like literally straight and narrow, but they can get a little bit broad, but not too broad. But you can see that the veins here are going up a straight line. Even this right here could be considered as like a straight line moving up instead of like branching out. Like the veins you can find pretty much at your wrist. If you look at your wrist and you can see your veins, they kind of like branch out, but not these ones. They do form straight lines. Examples of monocots include daffodils, grasses, and bluebells. And just so you know, grasses do have flowers too, although the flowers might look feathery, just like this. Dicots have 2 cotyledons in their seeds. That's why they're called dicotyledon. That means they have 2 cotyledons. And they have these characteristics. Broad leaves and leaf veins form branching network. Examples of dicots include hibiscus, daisies, and sunflowers. So here is a summary of the differences between monocots and dicots. Monocot seeds have 1 cotyledon. Dicots have 2 cotyledons. Monocot have roots that are fibrous, and dicots have tap roots instead. Monocots have vascular bundles that are scattered, and dicots have vascular bundles that are in ring form. We're going to learn about these two in topic 7, which is transport in plants. Next, monocot have leaves with parallel veins, and dicots have net-like veins. Monocot have flower parts that are in multiple of 3, and dicots have flower parts that are in 4 or 5. So let's look at our step to success. We had to say the main features of ferns and flowering plants, which include monocots and dicots. Ferns are vascular. They have stems and roots underground. The leaves are several cells thick, and it includes the upper epidermis, lower epidermis, palisade cells, and spongy mesophyll. They also produce spores when they reproduce. In terms of monocots, they have long and narrow leaves, parallel leaf veins, 1 cotyledon, and grouping of flower parts, which includes the petals, sepals, and carpels, are in 3s. Dicots have broad leaves, branch veins, and 2 cotyledons, and grouping of flower parts are in 5s. And that is the end of today. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!